What makes a good application? Now, progressing through the application stage is typically the hardest part of any recruitment process, as this is where the vast majority of candidates are rejected. You might have a 1 in 50 or even 1 in 100 plus chance of getting through to interview, but once you're there, your odds are significantly higher. Now, these statistics are only relevant really if luck is the key factor. And although luck might play some part in you getting through to the interview stage, it's certainly not a key factor in the vast majority of cases. It's about hard work, dedication, academic consistency, accumulating experiences, articulating skills effectively, and working relentlessly on your research and your application writing. So what does make a good application? Well, it's a question that I've been considering for the better part of a decade. First as a student, then as an author, later as a trainee solicitor, and more recently as a career coach. Probably reviewed close to 1,000 applications in my time, and it can be difficult to determine any one thing that distinguishes the good from the bad and the ugly. I'll now cover a few general tips before we go into the detail. Well, firstly, avoid generic answers. Now, I know you've probably heard this on a number of occasions, but you might be less sure how to do so. Now, matching your terminology to a firm's terminology can be a good start. If firms are seeking specific skills, try to cover each of these throughout your application and use the same wording that they do. For example, if they talk about organizational skills rather than time management skills on their website, then so should you. In addition, if you're referencing a firm's practice areas or departments, use the same terminology. So does the firm state that it's got a finance practice or a banking practice, and make sure you use that same term. More broadly, you need to make sure that your answers are personal and authentic wherever possible. And this is a point I'm going to continue to hammer home. For example, if you're discussing your motivations, link these back to your own experiences and learnings. And when discussing competencies and skills, use personal examples to demonstrate how you have developed and utilised these. Secondly, structure is key. Now, it goes without saying that spelling and grammar should be absolutely on point, but structure is equally important and often forgotten. If your structure is all over the place, your application will be more difficult to read, which might result in a graduate recruiter giving up before reaching the end. It could indicate that you'd struggle to draft concise, well-written client notes and research reports if hired, which doesn't give the greatest first impression. Plus, a weak structure might lead to you including new points that overlap with or duplicate existing points, which is counterintuitive when you're trying to make every word count. For example, and I've seen this loads of times, if you're discussing your motivation for wanting to work at a particular firm, don't mention training at the start of the answer, the middle, and the end. Maybe have a section dedicated to the development of employees, as this can avoid the risk of you repeating yourself and coming across as unable to write coherently. Now, one trick, and this is something I did myself to help you ensure you've got a solid structure in place, is to write out headings before you start writing each of your answers, even very short answers, as this can help to ensure that you don't lose sight of your intended structure during the writing process, and that your answers therefore remain logical and cohesive. You can always then delete those headings before submitting the application. Thirdly, it can really help to seek advice and feedback from the get-go. If you've not yet made applications, maybe visit your university's career service or meet with friends and family members if they've got experience applying to or working at similar firms. Now, they may be able to provide you with an insight into what firms are expecting from your application answers, although bear in mind their insights might be less helpful if they work in completely different industries. But it can also be really beneficial to have your applications checked by multiple sources over an extended period, regardless of whether they have any legal experience. Sometimes you simply need a fresh pair of eyes. You're probably more likely to miss mistakes or structural issues than a person taking a fresh look at your application, as once you've been buried in an application for an extended period of time, you're at risk of reading what you think you wrote or intended to write, as opposed to what you actually wrote. Now, this is something that's happened to me time and time again whilst working on my own applications and writing my books. So I've learned to accept that any help I'm offered from people willing to proofread sections can be helpful, regardless of their previous experience. Our career departments also tend to offer application checks as one of their services, so where this is the case, use them. My final point here is do not lie. Now, on my CV, I wrote that I spoke basic Mandarin and basic Hindi, as I'd attended government-funded study programs where we had a few hours of very basic lessons in greetings in those languages. I left it on my CV, forgot about it, and then found myself preparing for an interview 18 months later, noticed that on my CV and thought, I don't remember a thing. Why did I write that on there? So in the build up to my interview, rather than brushing up on commercial awareness and all that kind of stuff, I found myself trying to learn how to say greetings in these languages in case they came up. And I've heard stories of interviewers randomly breaking into Mandarin partway through an interview because the interviewee has said they're fluent in the language, so be careful.